Hey, everybody. Hello, hello. I'm so happy to be here on just about my favorite topic ever. How to overcome struggle, really, how to overcome suffering. Like, what is that? What is the nature of being alive here? And look how it continues to have peaks and valleys, kind of like the slide that you're seeing right now that I thought was really cool. It's like that's what thought feels like. Oh no, we're on the downside. Oh no, yay, we're on the upside. um, and that doesn't look so wonderful some of the time, and that's what we're here for. So I like thinking about this idea of struggle and suffering and the form it takes, the self-sabotage, like what we're drawn here today for, um, and just looking at any behavior and any feelings and the thinking that we actually have running and what we've believed it takes to make that stop, make that change, noticing the desire to have it change and shift. And I'm writing here, without doing years of therapy, having a rigid behavioral plan, or forcing yourself to feel or think differently. And I tried all of these things. And my mind will still come up with suggestions that have to do with all this in these departments. How about if you think differently about this? Or like, yeah, just, what's the plan? So it's not as if it's not there suggesting and doing what it does, but I love just sharing the process of this and us all together seeing, how things can maybe look differently than we've been thinking of them and how they look. And just noticing this experience of struggle that comes up over and over again. So I was once standing in a line at a big conference. It was for small business owners. And I believe this conference happened when I very first was full-time on my own as a business person. And long line, waiting at the tea and the coffee cart stand, very, very slow. And there was a woman in the line that had a dog in a little basket. She was right next to me. So I noticed that she had a little dog, one of those that goes in the purse, so tiny. So we struck up a conversation, and she shared with me after we, quickly started, she's learning what I do, and I was learning what she did, and as business owners. And quickly she was sharing with me that she had been 100 pounds heavier just 2 years before. And some of you know that I'm so interested when it comes to self-sabotage and what's going on there, whether it's eating or over drinking or smoking or any of the things that we humans do when it comes to overing things that look like more strong behavior. But she had done this eating, and eating was my thing, binge eating as well, one of my things. And she said something that I noticed, but it was said so strongly and with such passion that I never forgot it. I know how to be, so it's 2 years before she had been 100 pounds heavier. So this is 2 years later, which in some ways isn't that long of a period of time. And she said, I know I have to be vigilant at every meal, every day. I never want to go back there again. I maintain everything I've done. I eat on plan. My doctor has said I'll probably need to be careful for the rest of my life. And I just noticed this way of her speaking about that. And I thought, that's not true for me. I felt like that at different times. And then I'm not saying that she was doing anything wrong. There's nothing special about me. But I really feel like that is incredible good fortune to find out that I could question what it was that I was thinking and question that mindset that would look like, control is required, speaking about a rigid behavioral plan, and find out that it wasn't necessary, and that what was left without having that, like just relaxing and then relaxing more and relaxing more, was that unnecessary. It's unnecessary. It just, the compulsion was lifted, as some of us have heard in the 12 steps. It just, something happened where this was no longer necessary, it appeared. And I think that's the case with our stories as well, like the struggle with whatever it is that we're thinking. And I think that can be true for anybody, you too. I've just worked with so many people, hundreds, maybe thousands at this point. I have no way to count that up. But if you've done it for many years, when people in groups and in individual sessions and in retreats, where when they're willing to explore, what they're seeing as out of order and see things in a new way, well, when they're willing to explore how they're looking and what they're seeing, they do see things in a new way. It just keeps on getting worked. Like we keep on getting worked and getting, some understanding keeps deepening. So I am guessing that for many of you, this is not your first workshop on this topic. It's not your workshop you've ever taken to address the pain of struggle, compulsion, self-sabotage, some kind of behavior or feeling or thinking that feels really difficult or troubling. So I know it's a difficult topic, and I thought, if I had a future vision of where my life was going, it wouldn't be like, oh gosh, I really hope I'm looking constantly at struggle and self-sabotage and the way humans hurt themselves and each other in life. And so I just want to say first, it's wonderful that you have turned up here. And if you feel like, despite everything that you've done, like with all that stuff that you've done, you have failed at the change that you're seeking, I just consider right from the very start at this moment that it's not something to blame yourself about or attack yourself for. Just, what if there's nothing wrong with what's happened so far? And no, it might not look that way, but however long you've been struggling, what if that's just okay? I do like noticing that the past is over. And just that it really is something to not blame ourselves for. In fact, if blame and self-attack and criticism worked, then we'd all be free by now. And it doesn't seem to work, of course. I used to work, my last job that I had, that was a part-time job, as I was beginning to do the work of Byron Katie and facilitate self-inquiry, moving into that full-time, was I worked as a tobacco cessation counselor at the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance. And people receiving a diagnosis of cancer who had smoked, that did not make them quit smoking. And they might blame themselves horribly, but it didn't make them quit the behavior. So blame or shame, attacking ourselves or our own thinking, definitely feels painful and kind of, I don't know, feels like it's all part of the struggle. So, how many of us have tried to change our thinking and to be vigilant and careful about what we think? It can be a full-time job doing that. Like, if the answer was to be careful about what you think and watch what you're thinking all the time, then that would be quite a burden. I don't know. There's just because there's lots of thinking happening. What do they say? It's like 60,000 thoughts a day or something like that. There's a lot. It's just like a supercomputer installed in your head. And so good news is, fortunately, not required to be vigilant about that. So I think our overall approach to change hasn't served us necessarily well, or it can be confusing for the mind. So I read so many of your responses. So many people filled out that survey that I had before before coming and being registered or attending this workshop, and saying, what you've tried to help change. And there was lots of repetitive things and some unique and interesting things, but I felt like I had tried almost all of them. And some were like, wow, I never heard that before. But most were, I tried all these things to make change happen. Therapy and making lists and setting timers and trying to get your thoughts to think the correct thing. And trying weight loss and anti-procrastination programs, everything under the sun, NLP and doctors and meditation and 12 steps. And so let's say all of them have wisdom and good messages, everything. I thought the messages or support they offered didn't seem to be able to stick as long as I had some fundamental beliefs running about life that looked dangerous. It just looked like life was depressing or boring or disappointing sometimes. And then I would get the idea that I needed to change. And so those approaches that I would use, they became more like Band-Aids, and there were still wounds like underneath the surface that didn't really change. So I really believed there was something wrong with me and my feelings and my thoughts, and there was plenty wrong with the world. That seemed to be my go-to in the mind. And I believed I'd been hurt and damaged and broken, and then maybe I hadn't been so hurt and hadn't been so damaged and shouldn't be so upset. And, I really believed that the way out of suffering was to conquer something about myself. So there's an easier way to work with life, or the mind, I should say. And we're going to talk about that today. I feel very passionate about that. It's funny to say I'm obsessed with peace because it doesn't sound very peaceful to be obsessed, but I think you get it. It's like, oh my God, this is really awesome. But it's not like I'm thinking about it every moment. So anyway, that's what we're here for. So Carl Jung said that in every disorder is a secret order. And I rather love that saying that he has. There's lots of wisdom and hope even in that quote, but it says right in the middle of your pain is this thing that you think is causing so much suffering is a secret. Maybe something not so obvious. And I think of it like we usually run from whatever we're calling the disorder, like to feel that shame about it, or to feel afraid of it, or think, I have to do something about this. And I mean, disordered was exactly what I was at age 19. I was called that. Eating disorder. I dropped out of college because I was too anxious and depressed and unhappy and procrastinating all my class assignments, like not even showing up at some point, unable to control my eating or my desire to eat. I felt like I was actually pretty good at controlling my eating, but this desire and this, like I felt sort of haunted. And I just left. I left in the middle of that freshman year. I showed back up at my childhood home in Seattle, where my parents and my 3 sisters still lived. And, a one-way ticket on the airplane home, not telling anyone, gave almost everything away before I left, even my record player, which was like a sacred object. And that's how desperate I felt. I just almost didn't even know what was going on. But imagine if you knew, if I had known, maybe some part of us actually knows that there's a secret solution right in the middle of any so-called problem. It's a real different way of looking at it. And I felt like that sort of started a whole different track of life for me. And it wasn't so comfortable at first, and it didn't feel very good at all. But it felt like slowly but surely things began to change and shift. I love the word dissolve. I'm going to say that here. I love the word dissolve. Look at this picture. I have these little tablets that are like electrolyte tablets that for sometimes like long bike rides where you sweat a lot. You put it in your water bottle and you have to wait. You have to let it dissolve. And if you try to smash it apart or anything like, it just wouldn't work at all. You just have to walk away, put it in, stop, let go. I love, so etymology of the words. I kind of love looking up words and kind of how we're talking and how I'm communicating with myself and what I'm saying, which I think is nothing's original. But dissolve comes from Latin. It's very old. So dis, apart, solve, loosen. So loosen apart. And, I titled this, How to Dissolve Stressful Thinking. I love noticing that, that maybe a way to begin is by stopping this intense aggression we have towards ourselves. Like, I just hate the way I'm doing this, which is very common. Or just seeing that comes through, but that it changes. And I can't really break it up. I can't smash it apart. I have to just let it dissolve. It has to do its own work. So a big question is then, what allows us to loosen apart our suffering? It seems like it is having a mindset change. And I love to talk about self-inquiry here. It seems like self-inquiry kind of fosters that whole thing. It isn't guaranteed to create a mindset change. And I mean, I think if we start saying, I'm going to have a mindset change, that there's some aggression in that, it's gonna be tricky. But self-inquiry, nevertheless, is found at the heart of many religious and spiritual and philosophical traditions, maybe since we ever started thinking, all like just and even current modern day, mindfulness and stress management and these ideas about self-inquiry. And as many of you know, loving the work of Byron Katie, I like that simple form of self-inquiry, which I'll talk about in a minute. But really, it's been deep and abiding. It's part of a principle of sort of becoming wise in the human condition for centuries. There was a research study that was done with the Missouri Medicine and Stanford University, where they were applying self-inquiry to people with heart conditions, like all in Missouri Medicine. And they had quite a thing going where people were doing a self-inquiry practice, helping patients look at their thinking and seeing the outcomes that were on heart disease. And that it was quite remarkable, because people were able to change their weight and quit smoking and quit feeling so anxious, and then their hearts improved. And the most important thing was that they relaxed, like they weren't feeling so much despair and self-condemnation about what got them into this place. And I love that in modern times, people are doing research studies like this, and it appears like this self-inquiry, mindfulness, however it's showing up. So whatever we're calling it, it does seem to be like this beacon of light, helping us have that mindset change. No guarantees necessarily, but that's what I really hope to share with this workshop today. My goal for this workshop is sharing a way to dissolve struggle. And that dissolving struggle, that's through insight, just seeing the struggle differently. But what's weird is, and paradoxical, as many wise things are, paradoxical is you can't make yourself see something differently. And yet you can move and turn in the direction of being open to doing that by inquiring. So the way I say it is sort of like how I've written it on the screen here. It looks like the way to dissolve struggle is through just insight, like seeing something differently. Oh, aha. Can't make those aha moments happen, but the simplest way to foster them, make a fertile ground in your life for them to happen, is self-inquiry. And I have found that the simplest form of self-inquiry available, at least in these times, is the work of Byron Katie. So I can't make myself see, but I can inquire. I can see that I'm believing something that's stressful. So in a more simplified way, or maybe in just a one sentence way, the way to freedom from self-sabotage and horrible feelings and stressful thinking is to relax and notice. So if I believe my painful thoughts, I am definitely going to suffer. Definitely staying in the storm of suffering. And if I believe my painful thoughts and then I drop inquiry, like a tablet in there, inquiry, the tendency is to see differently in just a little bit or a great deal, and suffering fades away. So I'm not the only person. I've had this experience myself. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute, but I'm not the only person who's had that. I like to bring up other people that really have struck me, where their stories are quite, it happens all the time, working with people and just being with them as they inquire and seeing what happens and how things unfold and what kind of ahas come to them, which is a mystery. But I wanted to share that this one person, I'll call Julie, I've changed people's names, but she was sharing with me not long ago, somebody who had done, like, actually first an eating peace program and then the year of inquiry, because she kind of saw, I really want to look at all the thinking that's happening here that's causing struggle all the time. But she had been starting her first diet when she was 10 years old. Now, it doesn't matter if you're somebody who's an overeater or procrastinator, whatever it is, that's like starting a program to stop it, stop whatever it is that's going on at a certain time. In 10, pretty young. I think it was her aunt who was having the idea, her aunt and her mother. And consequently, between age 10 and 22, all those years, she was sometimes in the gym 4 hours a day at age 22. And she actually worked as an exercise instructor. And I remember her telling me that she was afraid of food all the time. It's like we're afraid of the alcohol and nervous about the cigarettes, or I don't want to get near those things over there because those people are doing that thing and I might go with them, or I don't want to be around people that are talking in that particular way because it's going to, taint me. We would just notice how much we do that. Anyway, so she had definitely felt that way. And as she looked at everything that was going on with this whole dynamic of trying to enforce change and make something be different and make her body be different and make sure she was a certain way, as she dropped that, so like a controlling kind of way of looking at things and questioned her fears and her beliefs, things changed. And she told me she felt like she had been falling at first. And I thought that was really like falling, like, in other words, not so comfortable. But maybe falling is better than holding on with that gripping feeling, to control. I don't know. But she found accept herself without any diet, without any plan, really. What a relief. So she continued to do the work on all aspects of her life. And then she was sharing with me. She wrote this to me in an email. I noticed a deepening self-acceptance and peace expanding in all areas of my life. I have a way to work with anything that happens. It feels like a miracle. And I love that she put it that way. I have felt that way too. And I want to say not all the time. Sometimes I think, things still come along. There's still problems, it looks like. But then what a wonderful thing to have this self-inquiry. So a little bit about me. Some of you know who I am. Some of you have never heard of me before in your life. And I love that you made it here. On the left is a picture of me and my 3 sisters, and I'm on the far left. I'm the oldest. And this is when we were in school in Grahamstown, South Africa, Makonda now. And we're just there for a year. My father's a professor, and not quite a year. So when I was there, though, is when I went on a diet with my mother for the first time. And lots of anxieties were appearing, and lots was happening about what I was seeing in the world at that time, and like looking at just humanity, and really having in my face like some different interesting and amazing things. And that started, I felt like an awkwardness, and I felt like something like lots of personal thoughts about life. And 5 years later, the picture on the right with my Princess Diana haircut, I was 10 times worse. Like, I just was struggling more than ever, and thinking that I need to like kind of clamp down on whatever it was that I was thinking. I get this thing under control, dropping out of college because my cravings felt so huge, and I felt so upset about eating and procrastinating, like I mentioned. And so here I was, a college dropout. What's interesting about the Princess Di thing is that little did I know that she was bulimic, and so was I. And there was something I recognized over there. I really feel like there's something I was drawn to, and I wanted to find out all about, because I was like that too. So anyway, I mentioned this because it started this approach to life that was called self-improvement. And I felt very homeless within. Therapists and gurus and teachings and reading and doing meditation and going everywhere and going to all different kinds of centers. And I got, you name it, if there was a religion that was available, if they had an institution or a building or anything in anywhere in my area, I probably visited it. But I had this deep question: what's the meaning of life? What's happening here? And why am I so screwed up? And subsequently, just along that journey, I mean, I kind of made it back through college and made it into grad school, getting a degree in applied behavioral science. Of course, had to study the psychology of everything. And but I wound up eventually running into this book, Loving What Is. And many of the things that I had studied and contemplated and talked about and been to meetings on, and books that I had read, talked about self-inquiry. I talked about asking, who am I? And I just would, I don't know what I thought. I would get kind of confused, or it looks sort of like way too cosmic, or I'd not really know how to work with it all. And so when I came across the book in the bookstore, Loving What Is, and I was like a total addict for self-improvement books, I would go to that section of the book. So I was fascinated by it all. I'd spend hours in there. And I found this book, Loving What Is, and I even thought about the title, Loving What Is. What a concept. And I thought, I am never loving what is. That is not what I do. And even in grad school, which was the time that I picked this book up, I was in grad school. We were looking at dis-ease and what was wrong with people, and learning how to diagnose people, their mental illness. There's a whole manual for it, the DSM. Some of you are therapists. What was wrong, was like the great analysis, and like how to make it right, how to get it right. But it made my mind wobble to even just think about that title, Loving What Is. So I'd love to know, I mean, just people in the chat, if you're there, if you're available to do in the chat, just let me know if you're familiar with the work. I asked people in that survey on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being very, very experienced, totally know the work, 1 being don't even know about it at all, absolute beginner. And way more people were a 1 than I expected. So I thought that was really, I don't know, just wonderful. What an opportunity. Okay, good. Love it. Yes, it has saved me and others around me. Awesome. Familiar. Learning. No. Beginner. You can share also. There's people in the Q&A sharing. You can also just share in the chat. Yes. Okay, lots in the chat. Yes. All right. So wonderful. It really was very, very powerful. And I felt like things were kind of coming together in a more practical way when I went to her school. So I want to tell you what happened a little bit right before I went to the school, though. I'm reading in the book, about Katie's incredible transformation. Just this, it's like she became a completely different person. You know, it was very radical. But then she described that asking these 4 powerful questions and answering them and finding turnarounds was a key to opening up your mind to that, away from that struggle, you know, from that suffering. And she definitely was saying, I'm not a guru. It doesn't matter what religion you have. It doesn't matter your personal circumstances. And so I decided to try it. And I was sitting on my couch in my living room. I remember it vividly. It was in the house that I no longer live in. Sitting on the couch, I'm like, I'm going to do this thing. She showed you exactly how to do it. So it's in the book. I mean, I have it right open. It says, first, write down your judgments, capture your thinking. And I thought, isn't that funny? Judge your neighbor. She described it, judge your neighbor. Answer these questions and just judge the heck out of your neighbor and whoever it is that you are disliking. And I was kind of like, my mind went, you know, first of all, aren't you supposed to love your neighbor? I think I had that really deeply within. You're supposed to love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? And so my mind went a little blank, and I was like, I don't really know who to judge at this moment, which makes me laugh because I had so many judgments of people, really, and myself. But I just locked in on neighbor. I was just sitting here, I don't know if I can even do this. I don't know if I can even do this. Oh, wait, my neighbor is kind of annoying. So that is how obvious it had to be to me. Neighbor, my neighbor is kind of annoying. So my very first time I ever attempted the work, I was writing on my actual neighbor. And it's just that she would come over too often and knock on the door unexpectedly. And I felt like this was an imposition. You know, she was borrowing things. So I could answer the questions that only identified your stressful thinking about this person. I could answer those. She comes over too often. I don't want her to. She shouldn't do that. I need her to stop, you know. And then I started at the top. She comes over too often. She calls too often. That's how I put it. And then, you know, Katie was writing in the book. Here's the 4 questions. Here's turnaround. So just start with this one question. Take your concept and ask this question about it. Is it true? I was like, what do you mean, is it true? Even though I just read the whole book, Loving What Is, and I saw those insights that people had, and a bunch of the people that she worked with, they were right in the book. What do you mean, is it true? Is it true? Of course it's true. I've been here. This is what I'm saying. It's true. It's absolutely true. And I spent, you know, I don't know, a little bit more time. I was just, I don't think I get it. I don't understand. Set it down, walked away. I did have the thought, though. I had this lingering thought, like, there was amazing things. I know I had some real discoveries just by reading the dialogues and reading about the work and seeing what the work was offering, that it's this self-inquiry. It's the way to do this self-inquiry thing I've been learning about for years. How come it worked for the people in the book? So maybe I just need to learn it. So I love this picture. This is what it looked like my first time doing the work. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, just to say, here I am, so passionate. I love doing the work. I love self-inquiry. I love opening up. And it's just become sort of a life's path. It's like a spiritual walk for me. And that's what it was like when I first was trying to do it. And that's even having read the book. So I sometimes can't imagine like being brand new and thinking about your stressful thought and then being asked, is it true? And, you know, there's a lot in that that can be very confusing. So I looked up on the internet how to do, you know, what Katie does. Where is she? How do I learn more about this? And found out about the School for the Work. And I actually applied for a scholarship. I saw a link where you could apply for a scholarship. I was reading all about that. No detail left behind. I'd be like reading everything. That's kind of how I was. And I booked plane tickets, even though I didn't know if I was going to get a scholarship or not yet. I just, in some ways, it wasn't that big of a risk from Seattle to Los Angeles, but sure enough, not long before the school was actually starting, I got the yes on the scholarship. And that was amazing. I mean, what an incredible gift. So off I went. Now, some people think, when they think, oh, this self-inquiry is so amazing, the only way I'm ever going to get it is if I go to the school. And it is amazing to go to a school and sit for 9 days doing the work. But this really ultimately is about continuing the practice in your life. And sure, because I was there and there were no distractions and my 2 kids weren't there, nothing else was going on, I could write down my thoughts, exercise after exercise, that I believed about my family and my children and my grandfather and my mother and betrayals and my body and food and eating. And I was looking at my eating disorder that had calmed down at that point. That wasn't so intense, but I still felt like my thinking was very heavy in it. And I like flip-flopping around all over the time. I just realized how many stories I actually had. So from that blank person that couldn't think of anything to judge on the couch after reading Loving What Is, except my actual neighbor. Oh, right. Okay. Lots more. There were so many interesting things to listen to from other people doing the work, which was incredible. So I listened to people talk about these amazing experiences that were just so profound. Like there was a guy whose sister had been killed on a family vacation 25 years earlier, like when he was in high school. And there was another man who'd just gotten out of jail after many years in jail, like 20 years in jail, and he was at this school. And there was a woman who talked about being in love with the same man for years who never loved her back. And somebody spoke about being an alcoholic. And I just would take in so much from hearing other people do the work. And they were asking these 4 questions. What's on the screen right now is something that's still in my wallet. And it was my first, what's called a little yellow card. It just has the 4 questions on it, you know? And I love that it says on here, with each turnaround, in silence, find 3 genuine examples in your own life of how the turnaround is true. In silence. Just let yourself be in silence, which is what all the spiritual traditions and all the philosophies kind of speak to. That in the silence in there is what I'm looking for. But anyway, it's people would ask these questions. And then it was, I think, the very night before we were done. It was like, you get to do the work and pair with people and do the work and do the work. And you really are doing your work. I mean, yes, that's the activity. So you're not distracted. You don't get lost. You're coming back. You know, if your mind starts spinning out, you're back because now we're doing the work still. So there is something to be said for like having a 9-day program like that I'm enrolled in, and that's what I'm doing here. But on the last night, this man raised his hand, and it was a night where people could go do the work with Katie up on stage. And I think some of the films that we see on YouTube, and when you get to watch people doing the work with people on stage, were from events like this. But he raised his hand, and he had a patch over one eye. And the topic of his worksheet was what he felt like he hated. His judge your neighbor, I'm going to judge the heck out of this neighbor, was cancer. And his work blew my mind. Because my father had died of cancer when I was a lot younger. And I always thought of that as a family tragedy. And that people had to fight cancer or forever wish you didn't get it, or how sad that was and how I still missed him. And then something amazing happened. I wondered, instead of assuming, if it was okay the way it had gone. Like, What if death isn't what I'm thinking it is? What if suffering isn't what I think? What if you don't have to fight anything? What if you don't have to make sure you're okay, about whatever, being the struggle? What if it wasn't personal? It was just life doing what life does. And shockingly, what if there was even some benefits? So not something I just have to never struggle with, just forever struggle with, but something that actually brought on something that was deeply important to me. So I know that sounds strange, but I think of that as a light bulb moment, a little light bulb moment, a lantern and a light bulb. But I can see that that is not something that I'm in charge of, that insight. I can't invent it. I can't force it. And yet it's the way something changed for me, and something deeply changed for me from that point forward. I mean, it was all wrapped up in everything that was happening, but I never forgot that man. And I never forgot my own inquiry process, sitting in that. So an epiphany, it seems like, is it just came out of the self-inquiry. So that's what we're here for. So a little bit of a long way of saying and describing sort of how things went for me and what happened, but I couldn't get enough of inquiry after that, it seemed. I mean, I just felt like this, a sense of a weight off my shoulders that had been on there for a very, very long time. And I really believe that if we think we want to, we want to end the struggle or dissolve the struggle by not having to get a ton more information, or suppressing or avoiding pain, or twisting ourselves into a pretzel, or even forcing ourselves to like do anything, even the work, I suppose. So we want to just be able to see things a different way, but also relax on that wanting, right? And it's kind of weird. So the usual approach to change: trying more approaches over and over again, tons of different approaches, or trying one that isn't working over and over again. Setting up a bunch of rules and regulations and discipline and willpower and schedules, stuff like that, doesn't seem to work. And feeling really guilty or terrified of what will happen if I don't change, and what will happen if I do change. So I love thinking about it this way, that when we approach change from the outside in, we could look at that. We could say almost that is like an outside in approach. That the actual steps for change, when we're doing outside in, that we're looking at the steps, we're looking at the behavior. We just want to see like the end result, what I have got, like what I've gotten, what the rules are, what the right way is. Let me follow that. And inside out, which is where we're like inside that silence, what we really want, the inside out is just being with our inner self and our thoughts and this journey and my identity, like questioning what it is, and my belief system and the conditioning and assumptions and interpretations, with curiosity and allowing. So inside out, at least I like describing it that way. I've heard it described that way from other people. And it seems like science agrees with all of this. Like, this is not so woo-woo. It's actually quite scientific. Neurologists and neuroscientists study this, and that it looks like our minds and our perceptions create our experience. And it's psychology, studying that for 100 years, Carl Jung back then, and spiritual philosophy, for centuries, that if we free our minds, if like looking at the mind is extremely important in all those traditions. Sam Harris, who's somebody I just adore, very intellectual, said this: almost all our suffering is the product of our thoughts. We spend nearly every moment of our lives lost in thought and hostage to the character of these thoughts. You can break the spell. but it takes training, just like it takes training to defend yourself against a physical assault. And David McCraney of How Minds Change, great book, fascinating. Everything that's ever happened to you has happened inside your skull. Even the sensation of having an arm is projected by the brain. It feels and looks like your arm is out there in space, but even that can be a misconception. Your arm is actually in your head. Each brain creates its own version of truth. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, we kind of know that's true. Broadly similar, but infinitely different and flawed in its details. That's the key word I highlighted in red. So, in other words, and like, if I think rain is super annoying, when rain comes, it's no surprise that I'm annoyed. But all these disciplines are intersecting with each other. And, I wanted to say, the Sam Harris quote, notice how it's on a picture of buried treasure, with smoke, fog coming out of it. There are so many myths and fairy tales and stories of buried treasure. Like, right under the house, there was buried treasure the whole time. Some person long ago dug a hole and buried something precious and covered the hole with foundation, then replaced the floorboards and everything in the house with it. It was all hidden underground. They lived a whole life. And I like knowing where to look. Want you all to know where to look too. So if you know the treasure is in the floorboards, in my thinking, you're going to start digging up the floor. And I know it sounds like a little bit of work, but it could be fun. Like, you get excited about digging up the floor. You're going to be willing to go excavating. I mean, that's guaranteed. Like, what? There's a treasure down here? Woohoo, let's go. So I start to get the feeling of that, like with inquiry. So question our thinking. So when we're questioning that flawed mindset, the flawed mindset shifts and changes. And when the mindset changes, we feel different. When we feel different, we behave differently. When we behave differently, it starts looking pretty different. Life looks different. It happened in an instant. And I just see that the easy way is to question the flawed thinking, not to force different behavior. So, story continues. Story continues. Weeds start to grow. So, for me, what I mean by this is an interesting happened. I mean, I had it felt such a profound experience of like life and death, and just so much that I had seen by questioning all those stories and then continuing to question them and going through a lot of bumpy things and things that looked really hard after I came back from that school. But I noticed that my mind really had a tendency to want to start thinking about problems and how to solve them. Let's think about problems and how to solve those problems, which requires a lot of thought, right? I'm either solving the problem or thinking about the problems, just really like going in that direction, which I realized is not inquiry. But letting the mind do that, get problems and solve problems, it seemed my mind would just it's like growing weeds, worrying, getting involved in the struggles, believing in improvement, trying to change things. It just looked like that was so easy to fall into, more and more, farther and farther apart from doing the work. Yeah. So there was a point along the way. I mean, I had, when I began to work with people doing the work, and I thought, and what do I want here? Because I had partnered, and then the partner went to live in a monastery on a silent retreat. I had another partner, and that was temporary too. And I wanted it to not rely on one person to have to get together to partner with. And I thought, what about a group? And so it just came to me, well, I see other groups, people making other groups, and I'm working with people, so maybe I'll make a group. Maybe it's like, and it has to be long. And people are really hesitant to join like a year of inquiry. Oh my God, that's a little too long for me. But I knew from my own experience of going to the school and how much time passed that it kind of would build up over time, and I wanted something that just felt like it was a practice, like kind of going to church every week or going to the gym regularly, or like doing the sort of training in a good way of something that I like. If I want to go to the Olympics, then I got to practice going to the Olympics. So anyway, that just seemed to be the right thing, even though that was a lot. And 14 people signed up. This was in the year 2010. And I almost couldn't believe it. It was before Zoom calls and a little bit before Skype. I know I didn't have Skype. We had instant teleseminar. Do you guys remember instant teleseminar? We had that. And it was awesome. I mean, it just was very simple. We only had one call a week, and people would come and go, be on there and be not on there. And I saw things changing, and I saw things, it was just very exciting to me. I saw people naturally having shifts without kind of enforcing the shifts to happen. Lots of light bulb moments, like every single time there was a gathering, there would be some kind of insight like, look at that, ooh. And it's been running ever since the year of inquiry. But I think of insights as like a dawning. I love this picture. This picture is from the summer camp program that I've just been running. It's just ending, but it's like, this is, dawn. Here comes the sun, and we're all in a little tent together in the darkness. It looks like darkness because it's weird. You start with self-inquiry as like looking at the struggle and what's painful. But we're in a lighted tent together. And it's actually beautiful. And here comes the sun. So I could see that the laughter and the joy, just coming, we're kind of having conversations and self-inquiry, allowed us and me to be loving what is and kind of learning in a easy way. I think of this as just such a wonderful place. It doesn't matter who you are, all kinds of, anyone could come, and we're all just doing the work. So in this simple way, seeing this, it's like tending the garden. I really like that metaphor of like, weeds start growing and you have a beautiful garden. It looks so gorgeous. I have a beautiful garden. It looks so gorgeous. Makes me so happy. It looked terrible for like a decade, my yard. And then something happened, and my mom helped me, actually, to be honest. And we just started making it good. And then weeds started growing. But in a nutshell, suffering plus inquiry leads to insight equals change. So, I mean, I just see the inquiry, coming back to inquiry over and over. And what I see happening was I'm like an instrument playing music, and one instrument playing music, you could sound pretty great by yourself. You play the guitar, it's really nice. But inviting a lot of other people to play with me, it starts to be this full, beautiful little orchestra, all interested in peace and change. So it's kind of like what we do, and Work with Grace kind of had been born as the name. Somebody really shared that with me. I didn't make it up myself. And I like the idea of grace being the gift of change, or the insight that happens that we're not in charge of, the dissolving that occurs. And we get to tend to the fertile ground. So Katie says this about inquiry. Before I found inquiry, I had no way to stop this kind of stressful thinking. Small stories bred bigger ones. Bigger stories bred major theories about life and how terrible it was and how the world was a dangerous place. I ended up feeling too frightened and depressed to leave my bedroom. How much of your world is made up of unexamined stories? You'll never know until you inquire. So how do I come to teach this, and what makes me qualified? I get, you probably get already, whatever makes me qualified is just my passion for it. I feel like I'm a very normal and average person, and sure, there's a degree in applied behavioral science. That is not where I learned this. It's not where I learned this insight. I learned a lot of information, but the real learning came out of the gift of inquiring into my beliefs about whatever's been happening. and the change, it just feels like remarkable to be a different person than I once was. And it does not mean I don't have problems that come up. I go, oh my God, that looks scary. Oh no, that's not happening. Yes, it is happening, but oh, so grateful to have. Then it occurs to me to start asking the questions. Wait, what is it that I'm really thinking here? Is it true? You know, who would I be without the story? So something is just there, just has gotten used to being there, being present. So I just like to share, that insight after leaving Katie's school was really remarkable to me. And it was like just a huge shift. And there's been little shifts all before that for sure. And after that, and sometimes like, wow. And that was a really dramatic experience. And very difficult events still happened. So that still occurs, of course. But I like that the process of this work, many people call spiritual inquiry. And I did train with Byron Katie in her certification program to just do the work with people over and over and over again, just hours upon hours of work with people. And I found the belief, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm going to say 3 secrets about doing the work that might help you all. But one of them is there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with life. I found that to be very common, very insidious. And I love helping people question that belief and helping myself question it. And even there's something wrong with my mind, right? So what are these 3 secrets? So many of you are familiar with the work, and I hope that this helps maybe shift something or just get a little bit, if there's been any blockages, let's put it that way, anything that's not quite dissolving when you're doing the work. And if you're brand new, this will fit too. This will be just right. So first secret is this wild adventure of self-inquiry, whether you're brand new or experienced, and DKM stands for don't know mind. The second secret is how questioning this one belief that I just mentioned uncovers a built-in app. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that one belief is there's something wrong with me and there's something wrong with life. And the third secret is how to do the work on difficult events that looks like are happening to you, like what to question first that can change everything. Sometimes those are really tricky. So first secret, and this won't take long, is noticing that tendency of our minds to say, I know what this is. I know what I have to do. I know I'm just questioning. I know I need to believe my thoughts. Just talking about what it knows. It's talking. It's making noise. But it often says when we have self-sabotage running and difficult feelings, it's saying I'm right about who I am. And it's bad. I'm a binge eater and it's a bad thing. It's terrible. It's like I'm staring into the sun. I heard somebody put it this way once. It's like we're blinded by the light, like we're looking at the sun, and that the sun is me, because my mind is really all about me. I'm the central, most important character for my mind's life, and I'm very focused on my investment in changing so that I can be happy. So I just noticed the minute you go into, I have to change, I have to become enlightened, that's never going to happen. Right? I mean, you're like, we have tight fists. So they're like this. I really have to make this happen. Just thinking in that way makes it never happen. I mean, that's what I know. You don't relax. It's really hard. If you try to keep your fists tight, it starts to really hurt. And also the good news is it's not possible. You're going to have to let go. But when we're believing, I'm determined to change, accepting this is intolerable. So just think about your struggle that you're trying to change, no matter what it is, that thought process of your feelings or that self-sabotage thing that you do, your procrastination, whatever it is. Accepting this is intolerable. Like we'll think if I'm not against it, it's just going to get this way or worse for the rest of my life. And just notice how painful that is. This process is too slow. I need it to change now. Like, I don't want to carry a worksheet around with me everywhere for the rest of my life. do this, even the work. I mean, it could do it with anything. And also, what can be a barrier in the work is I'm afraid I'm going to be judged. My judgments look so bad. My judgments look so awful. I remember I went up on stage once with Byron Katie, and she came to Seattle. It was later, as after I already been to the school, and I had a worksheet on money. This whole weekend workshop was about money. And I raised my hand at the end. I knew she was going to call on me. She had done the work on, somebody had done the work on poor people and people who do not have money. And there had been a whole day already. And the very last thing was the opposite, judge your neighbor worksheet. Everyone had already written that earlier in the day on those rich people, ultra wealthy. And I had this whole worksheet written out, and I'm reading, I go up on stage, of course, my heart beating and pounding and like, it's anxiety and just being seen. And I am reading the whole thing, and I hear this laughing, and I look up, and Byron Katie is just delighted. She's laughing, and she's just like, because I'm so detailed in my wordy, I like had this picture of people with jet skis, and it was pretty funny. But that kind of like surprised me for a second. I was like, oh my God, I'm being laughed at. This is, had the whole thing running. I'll be judged. My judgments look so awful. But there I was up there, and it was wonderful to do the work. I don't really remember it because it was so being in the spotlight for me. And just think of the courage that everybody does, who does that, and how helped I've been by people who get up there and do that. But we're just so afraid of what these thoughts sound like, and they sound violent and terrible. Like the thought is, I'm frightened of seeing my true nature. What if it's terrible? But just consider that the don't know mind is our true place. I mean, the work is like sort of leading us to, who would I be without my story? But I am somebody without the story. It's just the mind that's doing all this thinking stuff. When I am believing I'm right about how terrible this is, or that this is a struggle, I would kind of find that it looks like this, hopeless, tired, depressing, or like frustrating. So to believe the thought, fixing this is required. It's not okay that this is happening. That's a powerful thing. That's really the secret, the first secret. The adventure of inquiry and what gets in the way. Having an agenda. It is not okay that this is happening. Isn't that wild? I mean, it's because it looks like the reason I ever started doing the work and why I wanted to go to the work in the first place and why I signed up for the school is because I definitely thought something was happening that shouldn't be happening. So it led me into the work. So that's okay, that's thinking is happening. But I really like seeing it. If I'm believing in fixing, then it's just everything's a big self-improvement project or improvement of the world project. And it's going to be really hard. I'm going to be so dependent on those things, shaping up for me to be happy. So the steps for this one are: stop trying to change with aggression. I mean, just notice my determination, my tight fist. We all kind of wind up noticing it, and it relaxes anyway, so that's good news. And consider when something arises that I dislike, just to allow it to be there rather than have a defensive reaction. What if there's a buried treasure here? It's like, oh my goodness, this is happening. Oh my gosh, I just ate the thing again. Oh, there I was, and I drank more wine, and I didn't want to. What if there's a secret buried treasure right there? I wonder what was happening. I wonder, what if it's okay? What if that needed to happen so I could see something here? What if reality is okay? One thing that I heard powerfully said once was that sometimes this focus on having to make myself change or make the world change, like I wish that person would change, I wish money would change, I wish I would change, I wish I would, all the change is like a red herring, which is a false trail. Have you ever heard, in English, we say red herring. And this term means a false clue. So my mind starts to think, ooh, I need to think about all the ways to change and make how I enforce it. But actually, that's a false clue. Like the mind gets false clues. So the actual story of the red herring is that there was a gentleman's magazine of some kind, 1420. It would describe this version of a fish, that's smoked fish. And then it was in a British gentleman's magazine published in the 1600s. And they had fox hunting parties, I get, some of the people, right? The gentlemen. And the article said that they wanted to slow down the hounds finding the foxes, so it's it's less competitive. It's more of a competition. It's more fun. The process takes longer. So the magazine article apparently said, drag a dead cat across the trail and the hounds will go in that direction. And if you don't have a dead cat, then use a red herring. And it just caught on, and people started using that term. That's a red herring, to mean it's a false clue. My hounds are going in that direction. The inner hounds that I have about my thinking start to race in the direction of asserting change. And I lose the original, I lose the original wisdom or the quiet that's in there, because I have such an agenda to fix it. And it is so weird because it's hard, because it's like a paradoxical situation, because it seems like the thing I want to change is leading me into this open inquiry, but it's the don't know mind, like, just, oh, maybe I don't know. So that belief turned around. No fixing is required. Let's just stop. It's okay that this has happened. What if I can drop all my control, my plans and my efforts, and if I can just rest? What if I could do that? I like noticing that if we ever have an episode of self-sabotage, it does change, it shifts. I know that we'll say, but I do this all the time, but there are gaps in between, there's space in between. And what if I just stopped trying to enforce change? It's a really different approach. But Katie says this about it. How do you react when you think you shouldn't think certain thoughts and you do? Ashamed, depressed? Now turn it around. You should think them. Doesn't that feel a bit lighter? A bit more honest? Mind wants its freedom, not a straitjacket. That's not amazing. So we're not doing the work of Byron Katie to fix our minds even. Isn't that incredible? Kind of a mind wobble. So I want to share about one other person. Joe was in that very first year of inquiry, and he had been married for 30 years and his wife had left him. He wasn't sure he believed in the same religion anymore that they got married in, and she also found porn on his computer. So it was a whole thing. And he joined Year of Inquiry. I can't even remember. I have no idea how he found me. He was interested in Byron Katie, but I remember he didn't want to go to the school or do anything like that. And he could see when he was alone in his house, which was now empty, his wife had left, he had 4 kids and they were all scattered. Some of them were adults, but young adults. But he wound up suffering instead of enjoying the solitude. Like he had moved out into the woods on purpose, and then he wasn't liking it so much. But he would have this program to do from his phone. And he kept questioning his thoughts. And I swear he cried halfway through the year. He'd be crying. It was so sweet. And he was seeing that he still had his life ahead of him. He was worthy. He could have his history. He could love his wife, who was not talking to him anymore, without her even being there. It was so inspiring. So he accepted the divorce, and everyone loved him so much in the community of the people in Year of Inquiry, and he felt changed. He's participated 2 more years, but he reinvented his life, and he just found enormous freedom from just questioning, feeling it out. So I call this first secret dropping the knife. Drop the knife. That is said sometimes in it seems like in spiritual texts, this drop the knife. So questioning the disordered thinking is the pathway to dissolving disordered behavior. And I don't even know if it's disordered thinking. There might be more order in it than we realize, right? But I like thinking of this as the work is not problem solving, like we're just heart healers. With inquiry, we're not so afraid of our thoughts. It's not my job to solve any problems. It's a trap to solve problems, actually. No one has a problem-free existence. You're going to have things that appear. I've had things that appear in my life that look, oh my God, that looks scary. But when we're stop trying to be so focused on change, then this unconditional loving kindness becomes possible. Unconditional, no conditions. Shocking. All right, so secret number 2. Question this one belief, the one I mentioned already. There is something wrong. There is something wrong. But just a few things to say about how and what that looks like. I love that I heard Katie speak once. It's like people are seeds waiting to sprout. So you know how a seed is, if you put it in the ground, come on, grow now. Impossible. It's got its own life and its own time. Hold that for yourself. Let's hold that for ourselves. People get really upset. I asked people in the survey, how many years have you been suffering from this? And most of the people answered, 45 years, since age 10, my whole entire life, really long periods of time. And in some ways that can be questioned because there's gaps in between. There's the hardship and the struggle and the mountains going up and down. And then there's the really beautiful spots in between, and the times when we're sleeping and the times when that's not up. But that expectation about speed and the demand on enlightenment now is, like I said, sort of like it tends to be a barrier to the work, to self-inquiry. And when we turn around, I did something wrong, or that thing that's happening is wrong, and turn around to it's right, and that's the right thing, that can be a lot of relief. But I like seeing it helps seeing beyond the duality. It's neither right or wrong. It's just is what it is. But I love what I like thinking of as a built-in listening app, that there's a listening part of ourselves that can come out more, that it's not listening for anything special. Like we don't have an agenda. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do the work on there's something wrong with me, and then something will be right with me, and I'll make sure that happens or whatever. So I have a little story here. Long ago, way before the work, I was in a 12-step meeting, and I was in there and I was sharing about how horrible I felt and how horrible I was. And my life is terrible, and I can't get abstinent, and I'm miserable, and I don't know how to do life, and I'm just so weak, and I don't get this, and you all get this. I'm disappointing my parents. And I cried. I cried, which I didn't do in public very much. At least that's what I thought. And I ended my share, and somebody else began to speak in the room. And then I see this movement coming down the line of people sharing. It was in my row, and they were passing a little piece of paper, one person to the next person to the next person. I just kind of saw it over here, and I'm listening to the next person, kind of feeling hot and weird, like, oh God, at least I shared, okay, something. Wow, that was really emotional. Still see this paper passing along. And then somebody hands it and says, this is for you. This is for you. I'm like, this is for me. I could not see. It had come all the way from so far around in this big giant circle, and there was rows of circles. There was people right in front of us also in a circle, people behind also in a circle. It was a big meeting. And so I have no idea where it came from, and I will never know who wrote that. But I unfolded it. Apparently it was for me. I unfolded it, and it was on like a little 3-inch by 2-inch with tiny little lines and delicate ballpoint pen, swirly writing. And it said something like, I had it in my wallet for years, and then I looked for it once and it disappeared. I don't know, maybe I lost that wallet. I'm not sure what happened. But it said, when you hate yourself, it's a form of negative grandiosity. I was like, grandiosity. But that was the best. And it was said, they said, you are, so it's amazing that you shared. Good for you for sharing. You belong here, and you belong to the human race. It said some beautiful things. When you hate yourself and you hate that behavior, negative grandiosity. And I was like, oh my God, I thought it's kind of true. I'm really good at hating myself. It's just, but I think if we can forgive ourselves, or, for being so victim-y. A lot of us think, oh, I'm such a victim. I shouldn't be such a victim. I shouldn't be having these big feelings. I shouldn't be having this. I shouldn't be responding to life this way. Maybe it was brilliant, and maybe that wasn't up to you. Maybe that didn't have anything to do with you. It's just your mind doing what minds do. So just consider that. I think of it as really this thought, questioning there's something wrong, does not mean we're going to become passive. So just consider, it doesn't mean it's going to become passive, and that we will just, I guess since that's not wrong, I'll just drink wildly every night and keep smoking all the time, because that's total resignation. And we don't really want to be doing that. I've never found anybody I say, do you really want to be eating in that particular way? Is that like, they love it for maybe a couple bites, and then after that, it's not so lovable. It's just very temporary, which is a great thing to be noticing. So what is that that's happening there? So second step is with this wrongness thing. Notice how we feel so sad and upset and off. And it just means I'm believing something sad, upset, and off. My feeling is just matching my thinking. And once again, inquiry. I wonder. The first one is, what if? I wonder. Just wonder about it. So sabotage. We so think that something's wrong when there's sabotage happening, right? Sabots are shoes that make a lot of noise. So there was union workers, and mostly these are worn by peasants and workers and hard workers, laborers. And there was protests in Europe, and they'd pound their feet and make noises about equal rights and better conditions. Protest, attention. And so that's where the word sabotage has come from. Noisemakers, listen to the squeaky wheel. If you think of anything that you do that looks like sabotage as an opening to attention here, listen, be that listener without an agenda. So sweet. It's so kind. I could ask myself, Grace, what are you thinking right now that's making you upset? Like, I have a whole story that might run if I listen to what my thoughts are saying, and I can write them down. I mean, I'm in conversation. I'm opening to listen to that part of myself that's upset. And I like seeing these parts in parts. It's sort of like internal family systems, but we don't have to know anything about anything special with any systems or any special ways of thinking about things. But I love, my passion for understanding that. I've loved the way that internal family systems has allowed parts to speak very clearly. So what if your saboteur has a purpose, or at least believes it does? Yeah. What if it's like a firefighter trying to, at least mine was, another little story. Share another little story. So I could definitely see at one point that my saboteur, and in my form that it would take, is binge eating and maybe smoking and some other distracted things that I would do. It would come up around anger and some other heavy emotions that I believed were bad emotions to have, or like heartbreaking emotions. So long before the work, in my very first job, I came into work at 9 a.m. one day, and it was my first job. So I felt I was very young, my 20s, early 20s. And my boss seemed very experienced and very old. He was probably, I have no idea how old he was. He's probably only like 40, which doesn't seem old to me anymore. But there he is. And he had something to say, Grace, can you please come into my office? And he was upset about something. I can't even remember the thing now. But I left with like adrenaline, heart racing a little bit, thinking about it all day. And I even started to get mad, like, that's not fair, because this other person, or, you know, like, wow, I feel a little bit like I'm being blamed here and I shouldn't have been blamed. And I had all kinds of stuff happening that felt like aggravation and storminess and like this on the inside. By the end of the day, I mean, I had made a absolute plan. I had calculated it out. Where am I going to go first to get something to eat? The minute it strikes 5 o'clock, I'm running out of here and I am binge eating. I have huge cravings. And I was just thinking about like food and eating and the stuff that and what I was going to cancel that night to do the eating instead. And I luckily was in therapy group. And I shared about it later. I wrote about it later because I still binge ate. I mean, I was eating like crazy and miserable, totally miserable. And I remember it's the first time I put together, oh, I got really embarrassed and really angry and really irritated and felt like it wasn't fair. And I was taking it out on, letting these really terrible, stormy feelings out by doing this behavior. So the behavior was coming in like a firefighter, helping things calm down. Like, what would I be like if I didn't have this sabotage behavior to come in and to the rescue? I don't know. Maybe my head would explode and I'd go insane. I'm not sure, but it was a great question. And like, right. Maybe there's another way to let things happen. Maybe I can do nothing, do much less and have it, maybe it'll calm down anyway. So Richard Rohr speaks to that. He says, the fears that assault us are mostly simple anxieties about social skills, about intimacy, about likableness, about performance. It's exactly what was happening for me that day. We need not give emotional food or charge to these fears or become attached to them. We don't even have to shame ourselves for having these fears. Simply ask your fears, what are you trying to teach me? Some say that fear, F-E-A-R, is merely an acronym for false evidence appearing real, which I love. It is false. I mean, I was believing my stories for sure. And a way to sit with this, like how to approach this thought, I'm doing it so wrong, that seems very persistent, or the life is wrong, is Martin Luther King's idea. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. When I'm hating myself and hating this behavior, it is such a burden. So instead of problem solving it, let's, whatever an act of love means for you. And so lastly, last secret is with self-inquiry, with dissolving self-sabotage and difficult feelings and stressful thinking, is to do this one thing, is when trouble appears, accept it. Question the belief. This is unwelcome and unwanted, and that includes things that have happened to you. So not so much like about us, things that have happened to us, those difficult events, those traumas, those people. So one more little story about this. This was after the school, and this really came home from, after the school. So one thing that happened for me after I went to that school for the work was my husband at the time decided or said he no longer wanted to be married. And that was a huge journey with relationship, recognizing that I believe I'm being abandoned, how to just working with that, watching the fear and panic. But a couple years later, I found myself on a date. And I had the work, and the work was very much alive, and I really appreciated that. So I think that whole thing navigated in a different way than it ever would have if I didn't have the work. I don't know what would have happened. But so there I was, and I was on this date, And this guy took me to the date in a place called the Marine Room, which I'd never heard of before, but it was this famous restaurant on the coast of California, like literally on the coast of California. I don't know how they did it. They built it right into the sand practically, like 100 years ago. So sitting in the Marine Room on this date, and he says, I have a call. He has a call come in and he has to go take it. He says, I might be a minute. It's a client. I gotta go. And so he leaves the table, and we had finished the dinner and the bill is on the table. Very expensive, $200 something. And so I sit there for 5 minutes. I sit there for 10 minutes. I sit there for 15 minutes. And I decide, okay. I get up out of my chair and I begin to walk towards the restaurant exit. And the waiter quick rushes up and touches my mind. Is there a problem? And I realize I can't walk out of the restaurant. It looks like we're leaving without paying. Like, no. So I told him my date took a phone call, and he says, oh, well, you're welcome to sit as long as necessary. Oh, yeah, right. Go back to my chair. I'm not going to leave, without paying, at least not at this point. And so I look around longer, and I'm starting to have stressful thoughts. And I do the secret number 1, stop trying to change the situation. Secret number 2, what if there's nothing wrong? What if it's not as dangerous as I think? Secret number 3, welcome what is. What if what's happening is exactly what's supposed to be happening? And I look across, and this picture, it's so great. It's almost exactly where I was on the table. I'm looking straight across at this exact view. And right past that banister is a round table that fits 8 people. And I keep looking at it. I've been staring at everyone in the restaurant, for a long time. I mean, sitting there. Didn't even have my phone. My whole purse was in the coat check. And so, just looking around for all that time, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So then I realized at that 8 top table, there was 1 empty chair. And I just paused, and then I realized I could go over there and ask to join them. Never would have thought about that in a million years without that kind of process of relaxing or inquiry, or just letting it be the way it was, which, just was something that seemed was more and more normal. And I went over there, and they said, of course, kind of sit down. And they proceeded to tell me that they are like the owners of the restaurant, or related to the owners. They're part of the family of the people who started this whole thing 100 years ago. They asked me questions. I told them I'm on my first date, because I was there for like 40 minutes. He was still gone the whole time. Fantastic conversation. One of the best times I ever had in the whole town and this whole area. One of the members of the of this family was a real estate agent, and that was my date, was a real estate agent, and started making jokes about it, and we were laughing. I had a fantastic time. So I noticed that my thoughts about being abandoned were not true. And I love that things happen like that all the time. So Eckhart Tolle says, to welcome whatever arises in this moment is the ultimate spiritual practice. If you practice just this one thing, you won't need to read any more books or learn any other meditation techniques. To welcome whatever arises in this moment, outside or inside of you, brings freedom. The conditioned mind will tell you, you don't need to do this, because it believes that by resisting, you will become free. But the opposite is true. By resisting, you become even more stuck. When you no longer believe what the mind is saying, you realize the quickest way for transformation to happen is to welcome what is. And in that moment, life is free to move through you. The conditioned mind is no longer obstructing life. That sums it up. So accept and welcome what is. I like to think of it as step 1, feeling safe as I review this memory. It's just a memory. I'm just having an experience that I'm imagining. I'm in a theater watching a movie. My mind is talking about what's happening here and that it's dangerous, and it actually isn't. And I can allow these feelings to show me what they need if I'm really upset. Like, just be a good listener. So really, just again, as I do the work, I'm laying the groundwork for light bulbs to sprout. I can't make them grow, but change happens when we see something beyond our thinking. Thinking is like molding clay. It tends to change through inquiry. It's like we're working it and it changes through inquiry. And it naturally happens. We see something in a new way, a light bulb moment. So I'm almost done here. Thanks for hanging in. It's taken a little bit of time, but somebody said this last year in Year of Inquiry. I'm having an amazing experience. I'm doing the work on my wife in our group, and I'm doing it only on her for 30 days. 2 decades of entrenched thinking about what my problems have been in this relationship. I was so sure I was right about my perceptions about her. But by questioning these thoughts, I had the awareness. What exactly was the problem? Why was I so tight about this? It's dissolving. I love that she used the word dissolving. I mean, she wrote this, or she was saying this out loud. As I do these worksheets, it's like what happens is I cease to be at war. The practice of the work is really the key. I'm experiencing this. It never would have happened if it wasn't for Year of Inquiry. So inspiring. So those 3 secrets, the wild adventure of self-inquiry, just letting ourselves relax into the don't know mind. Secret 2, on those steps on how to get there. Secret 2, uncovering that built-in app, which is not listening for anything special, no agenda, questioning, this is wrong. My behavior, the way the world is, whatever's happening, the feeling, the thinking. And number 3, how to do the work on difficult events, like question to safety. I'm in a movie. It's okay. I really like to think of that. What happens is that things begin to leave us that are no longer necessary. And if you imagine, instead of it being this evil monster that's been plaguing you, making you sabotage yourself, and like the eating behavior or the thinking behavior is like this horrible, horrible thing, or terrible feelings, total anxiety, definitely not comfortable. It's not like, oh, yay, I just can't wait. I hope I'm anxious all day today. No, I would not say that. But to just be able to turn that around and consider it like Mary Poppins, when no longer needed, it will go. Adyashanti, one of my favorite meditation teachers, spiritual teachers, says there needs to be some transformative energy that can flash into consciousness. It needs to be an energy that is powerful enough to awaken consciousness out of its trance. Inquiry is an active engagement with our own experience that can cultivate this. So, what am I thinking and believing? Ask 4 questions, turn it around, let it be the way it is. Inside out revolution happens. So love this question. So Cookie Monster, one of my favorites, probably because he loves cookies so much and he's happy about it, not upset by it. But how many of you feel a little bit like this with crossed eyes? And it's the nature of thought to have a lot running and there are a lot going on. But I really want to tell you about the Year of Inquiry. So is it all right if I have a special offer for everyone who's here today and who's listening? And I think some of you might be already joining Year of Inquiry already, so that's great. But is it all right if I spend like 10 minutes sharing about that? Because I know we've been already going 90 minutes, which is a little longer than I had expected. So just let me know. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, so sweet. Yes, yes, yes. Yay, it's awesome. So enthusiastic. Okay. So as you remember what I said, I was so happy to make the program Year of Inquiry in 2010. So I can't believe it. It's been going for that long. Anyway, there's this proverb, an African proverb, no one can do it for you, and you can't do it alone. Like all the great things, paradoxical, but true. And I love You Can't Do It Alone. And it doesn't mean that has to be in any specific program, but I love that we can have one. So I think of this as, that be the change that you want to be in the world, except for a lot of us who do it with like, I'm going to double down and be that change, be the way I want it to be, when we're doing it a different way than that. But I do think of it as kind of along those lines, that it just winds up how it turns out. So I like this program to be, it's like for me, I feel like I developed it for myself in a way, and that it is just including everything we all need to stay engaged in self-inquiry. Like we're just doing it together, like the way we go someplace every week, and that we're not 100% alone in the world. Like we just join in community. It's a pretty high touch program. And I'll say what I mean by that by just a couple of things that are in it. But I really want to make everything that's available to us, so that our awareness and a wisdom can emerge the best way it can. And you kind of hold that lightly. So we just get familiar with our own story tendencies. And maybe some of you are really familiar. I'm really familiar with my story tendencies. But when we hear other people, it's like that magnificent moment. I heard that man who had the patch over his eye, who had cancer, and it made such a difference for me. And I didn't even speak. I was just listening to him, but it made me drop into my own work. So I feel like there's a lot that happens there that I sure get from being with everybody in this program and in this story. So the way it's set up in the worldly world, is there's 3 sessions a week, and I do Tuesdays and Thursdays, and facilitator Kelly does Wednesdays. I'm doing a little interview with her tomorrow, so that'll be available sometime if you're listening to this recording, to meet Kelly that way. But she is a certified facilitator, and she was in the Year of Inquiry as a participant for 5 years. And then it just came out like, oh, she could facilitate Wednesdays. So great. I mean, it just organically happened. And we're just, moving into the questions over and over again and seeing with each other, and people, somebody might get to do the work, and maybe it's sort of a popcorn inquiry situation where everyone's getting to really look at that, but everyone's getting to look at it every time anyway. It's hard to put a value on this kind of thing, but I know sometimes people really like to see that and kind of compare that. So that's what that little piece is, where I'm saying, how much if it was $30 a session or $25 a session, I mean, sort of just trying to pull something out, but like, what is that? And compared to other things that have also are also out there, and what I don't know, I'm like what we trade to just keep things flowing and keep things moving. Like I sign up for things, and I've done things over here, and I get involved with this over there, and all that keeps running. So we're just working with 4 questions, but we're also moving beyond the 4 questions, because it's not about walking around with a worksheet in your pocket every minute. It's like kind of finding out, like touching that silence and being in that don't know place, and experimenting and being in a collaborative relationship with life, with love, loving kindness, unconditional love. Does my mind move into trickiness or trying to be right or twisting whatever's happening to something about me personally? Yes, it does. I'm human. But this is one of the reasons I like staying in the community of people doing the work, people interested in self-inquiry that will, hold everything lightly, maybe not even believe at each other's stories, right? So we've got those 3 sessions a week to choose from. And people often just come to one. Like you figure out which one works for you, and that's the one you come to. I don't say like, we need to do every single one. Some people come to every single one. Some people listen to every single recording. But I mean, people get to see what happens. Sometimes, other things that they're doing get to be reduced, and some things that really helps if you're in a 12-step program to dive into why, or if something's happening, if you're struggling there. And I just think that it blends with anything else that we're doing really well. It's like an accompaniment. So, there's this orchestra playing, And we just learn to be curious and aware of the flow of thought. And we partner in the work every month. So you get a new partner every single month. And there is going to be training on how to partner. And I'm going to do this a little bit differently for the first time this year, just a little more on partner work. So we'll have a scheduled event where people can come and who feel like they just really want to learn about more about partnering and facilitating each other. And lots happens in partnering, and you don't have to. Anybody who's going away or just doesn't want to do that, it's too much, you get to opt out. It's like a smorgasbord. You get to pick what you need, pick what you want. And just the administrative costs and the involvement, and also being available for partner pairing troubles and changes. That's how I put a value on that. It's like an hour of my time. Also, we have a mini workshop every single month on a topic. And we've had traditional ones where it seems like, every year in January, we do the whole month on money. Every year in February, we do the work on relationships because it's like Valentine's Day in the Western world. And that probably will still be like that, like just to really dive in that particular. Of course, you can do the work on anything. Your life is really the work, where the work appears out of. But we do the work on, shame and hurt and fear and living the turnaround and lots of other the body. So we've got little workshops on these things to kind of dive in deeply to this particular topic. And it's like things that, the key things that humans tend to find oppositional in life, our worst fears. And we kind of stay in the practices of the work, like best practices of work, and keeping it clean and simple. So those workshops, I sell workshops that underway like for $47 or $60 or $97 or $27 sometimes. So that's how I put the value there on that. We do that together, and it's only for us, no other extra outside people, just for our group. And then also, really amazing part of Year of Inquiry, if I say so myself, we have a Marco Polo sharing group. It is an app that you put on your phone. It's free, has no advertising. They have this thing of their intention is to keep people connected together for happiness. Nobody has to do it. Some people are not big on doing the video texting. Most people are, and it's 24/7, and you just get to leave a message, and you can do your work into onto this app, and people will respond to you like, here I'm thinking right now about da 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 da, and I just want to share. I'm reaching out, and somebody you'll just ask your question or say whatever's going on, and you can talk as long as you want to, and people get to learn about if they feel like they have to listen or if they are not. All of that is underway, and you kind of get to do the work on just that kind of live communication. And I listen to everything. So I'm usually in there at least once a week responding. And people show like, this is what it looks like on my walk to work. This is what it looks like on my bike ride. And it's so fun because you just get to know these different parts of the world. Somebody's like on a shore in Ireland, and somebody's, in the Netherlands. And somebody's taking a walk I'm taking a walk in Seattle, and it's raining. So we get to show what our houses look like, or our spaces or places or people. It's very, very sweet. It's totally private. So I love that. Because I'm right in there and really working on that. I put the value there too on the worth of that. And you can direct message people from Marco Polo. So if you have somebody you want to say, oh, I wanted to say something to you individually, you can just pop on there and do that. And people can do that with me. And people do. So I am available for the whole 10 months. Okay, this is going on. I'm having a crisis, whatever's happening. I'm wondering about this, and I will respond. So we also have a private channel. It's a Slack forum, and it's a place to do your work. It's where everything is saved. It's where you can write out if you're more like writing instead of talking your work, or reaching out for commentary, like you want to slow down and write. It can go right there, and it's one page, and it's also an app. which I love that. So that is also right there, knowing that everything is going to be read and running this online forum. I put a value of an hour a month. So people wonder sometimes if they are brand new and they've never done the work at all, if they can do this and if they can get in. I say, absolutely. You will get the hang of the work. I mean, I went to the school for the work knowing nothing about the work. Can you remember the 4 questions? So I have a course that is the introduction from the work from start to finish. And I'm going to get close with the people who haven't done the work at all. And you can go through the step-by-step with the little videos of me showing, now do this step, and you'll do the work from start to finish, literally. You write one worksheet and you'll finish a worksheet and you're going to share with me like what it's on. And you can follow along with yourself. And then you'll really have a greater sense of the whole thing. And you don't have to do that, but you will get to do that by being in the year of inquiry. Also, everyone who's in the year of inquiry, some of you have this already maybe, but you'll all get access to the home study course, Living with Money, which is like a 6-session, 12-hour course. So, I mean, but you can use it the whole year, listen to little pieces of it over time. And it's really powerful. Somebody told Todd and I, who are co-facilitators of this one, I bought so many courses, and you know how people never finish courses, and I'm one of them, but this one I finished every single drop because it was that good. I was like, awesome. So it's very dynamic. You get to kind of be in the workshop with the people. And the same thing goes on with the Eating Peace Basics course. So you're not just like me talking head or exercises. You're just sitting in the middle of people doing the work together and having it, described or shared to them. So everybody who joins the Year of Inquiry gets the Eating Peace Basics course too. The Eating Peace Basics course, it is addressing food and eating, but it's so much about self-sabotage and all the forms of behavior that we do. So I would recommend, if anybody is feeling like they do procrastination, or they do drinking, or they do smoking, you can follow along in this course and you sort of insert your own thing. Some little things may or may not apply, but some things really will. Most of the things will. So that's pretty cool too. So, just kind of adding up all those little things, just to give a general sense. I don't know. I mean, I've seen lots of programs that last 10 months long, and it seems like the cost might be something like this, coaching programs. I've taken a coaching program, whenever that was, like 15 years ago, that was $15,000 for a year. Not unheard of. But I want to say there's one more thing. I've gone back and forth around this and kind of divide about this, but everybody who is in the Eating Peace Inquiry Circle, which is not running right now, but it'll probably start again in the winter, I just would like that to also be available for people in the Year of Inquiry, because the Year of Inquiry just seems like the kind of signature program. It's the baseline. It's the circle that's happening. It's the, I don't know, it's just the thing that I've done for the longest. So when I start the Eating Peace Inquiry Circle, which is once a week, talking about only compulsion. We did that this summer. Once a week, we did one of the days of the summer camp, because we did something Monday through Friday. One of the days of summer camp was on compulsion. And we just focused on that. So there's lots of crossover. I mean, it's self-inquiry, but people who want that, I'm just going to have it be something that's available for the Year of Inquiry people. So all of that, listing it out just to get a sense of, I don't know, value, and this is be all kind of thrown up in the air, comes to this, $7,902. So the thing is, I did want to share what other things look like, School for the Work itself, 6,500-ish. Didn't look exactly what the latest, but I think about like that, right? a month living at a monastery, $3,300. You're just looking at everything that is offered out there for like self-inquiry and mindset change and watching and you know, group therapy sessions. And even if you just did solo therapy sessions with me for 10 months, $5,800. I'm kind of considered at like a normal to a little bit lower rate of I go into the middle and then maybe a little under in my area for an hour session. So anyway, just to consider all of this, that the year of inquiry is, the actual price is $197 a month for 10 months. It's not for a year. I call it for a year of inquiry, but it's actually for 10 months because we take the summer off. And you can pay in full for $18.95. And then if you want solo sessions with it, I only have room for like 6 more people at this point. But solo sessions, $297. So basically it's like you're having year of inquiry, but you also have a solo session with only me. Maybe you want a partner, maybe you don't. Like with a partner, maybe you're doing that with me. $297 a month or $28.95 for the whole year. I mean, to me, it looks like awesome for self-inquiry, for being in a program, just not so expensive, at least, I don't know. So I love that Katie says the work is the direct way to orchestrate your own happiness. I mean, Byron Katie says that. And I have found that to be the case. I don't know what else to try, you know, if I don't want to keep trying all those things, but I kind of want to get to the root and plant the seeds and then wait and let things dissolve. It just seems, it just comes back to inquiry, inquiry, inquiry over and over again. So the way you would sign up with all these extras added in is you go to workwithgrace.com/year-of-inquiry, and you have to write that in. You have to open up a new browser window. Like it won't work to click anywhere here. You have to open up a new browser window, go to that spot, and that will take you, there's a button there. It will look like, when you open up, it looks like this on the top. No, that's not the right place. It looks like this on the top, yes. And see how it says join the year of inquiry? That will scroll you, that will race you down to the bottom, which is where you can also just scroll slowly if you want and take a look, which is where you'll see the different links, and there's 4. So sometimes people are kind of confused, but basically it's that you're doing it with or without solo sessions. And I'm going to stop the solo session the minute it's full. But so this is the first 6 people, 6 more people, then we're done with that. But the regular without the solo sessions, you can pay one time in full, and you just click on that box. And then if you want to do 10 monthly payments, you click on that box. The second one that's in green. Then if the bottom 2 are for the with solo sessions, and one of just monthly payments, 10 monthly payments, and the other one is just for one time, boom, you're done. So, and it's 10 monthly payments from the minute you join. So then it's 9 more after that. I do want to say that it explains on the monthly payment plans, it explains that there is an honor system. I would have enough people over time that would be like, great, and I really want it. I can't afford this. I need it to be lower, but I really want to be involved. Like I'm unemployed right now or something. And I know that happens in life. And so there is a way, and I should have made it so I can scroll down a little bit, where there's 3 codes that you can put in. And I just considered an honor system instead of even applying for, you know, more of a scholarship or anything, and still write to me if there's any need. But it's just pay from the heart honor system, so you can contribute what's right for you. So there's some codes in there that every single one of your monthly payments would have a reduced rate. And this is what it looks like. This is where you put it, the code right in the middle of the box is when you write the code in, and it shows you what the code is, and you put it right in the middle of the code, and it will change your registration. And that's definitely available for you all in this mini workshop. If you're paying in full, it's the same thing. it's a little bit different. You wouldn't have a code, but there's the sustainable fee for the one time, but you can also go lower. And it's actually $14.70 is the bottom that it can go to, but it can go lower in case you're like borrowing it or a family member is giving it to you all in one chunk or something like that. There's reasons why you can't do 10 monthly payments. You can also set up some kind of reduced rate for that too. That's what it is. It's pay from the heart. There's a sustainable, and then there's a little bit to make it so everybody can do it. So yeah, just to close this today, thank you all for this amazing time together. I thought it would be about 2 hours. That's exactly what it is. But Katie's final quote here: "You are the storyteller. You have become the stories you told yourself. And you are what lives prior to every story. Story, suffering. Inquiry, no story, no suffering. Freedom is possible in every moment." And Viktor Frankl, who I refer to a lot and love so much, his writing, "We always have the choice to not be affected by surroundings, circumstances, situations." So I love that this is on a picture of Dorothy following the yellow brick road, right? So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. Now, if anybody has any questions that you want to put in the Q&A, we don't have to stay right here to get them answered, but you can put them in so that I know to just, I can either write back to you and answer your specific questions, or you can write it to Grace at workwithgrace.com to ask any specific question. And you can also do a short 10-minute consult with me live on Zoom on my calendar. And I've put extra things in there for this coming weekend before Year of Inquiry even starts. So just in case you want to meet me and say, hey, here's what's going on, this is what I'm thinking, this is what my question is, you can do that. So, they're set up every 15 minutes or something for the times that I'm available. So you can do that too. People are, scheduling things for next week. Next week is orientation. And you won't miss anything in some ways if you don't come to orientation. People will be joining. I know what it's like. I know what you're like. They will be joining all the way till like October. So it's just the way it is. So I don't say you have to sign up by Monday. It's nice if you start on Tuesday with everybody in the orientation call, but absolutely there's going to be people that are joining who like even just hear about it like in 2 weeks for some reason. So that's the way that goes. I know from experience. But if you have any questions here today, you can absolutely let me know. Thank you. Somebody just wrote, "You were on fire today. What an inspiring talk." Oh, that is so sweet. You're so welcome. Thank you for that feedback. That is awesome. Wow. Yeah. All right, my friends. Thank you so many people for being here. I just love it. I love that you stayed the whole time. 2 full hours completely. What an amazing workshop. And let me know how you feel later. I always like to hear people's feedback, and not just of this particular workshop, but what it's like for you as you wonder about all of this. Okay. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Really appreciate you. Okay. Lots and lots of love. All right. Bye, my friends.